sure how I find myself in these spaces, but I am extremely happy to be here. I will put it that way. It's your man DJ Ekin, Tampa's most connected DJ. Hip Hop Study Hall, where we continue to explore the possibilities through hip hop. That's how we like to call it. And big shouts out to my guy Ben, who I do not move without, of course. And big shout out to this guy right here who let us come in what is nicely known as Executive Studios, my guy James right here. I didn't know if you wanted to give him the whole name introduction, how you wanted to do it.
James Wood.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
There you go.
Owner, engineer, producer. There's like some other titles that go in there.
Becoming a future entrepreneur. I'm get my hands in all kind of different things this year, man. So
man. Thank you first of all for letting me and the team come here and just talk to you and pick your brain about the things that you do, right? So let's start here with a little bit of a history of you. Like let's take 12, 13-year-old James. Did you know then that a studio was what you wanted to one day own, or did you just have a love for this entertainment music thing?
Oh, absolutely not. 12-year-old, 13-year-old James probably thought I was going to play football or be an NBA or something like that. I was a heavy sports guy when I was young.
Right.
As I got older, of course, had some heart issues a lot of people know about. I wasn't able to compete at a higher level of sports. So my passion turned to music, I want to say probably my freshman, sophomore year of high school, and actually used to battle rap.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was I don't know, it was kind of fun. I used to battle all the guys in high school, and that's how I kind of got my start into the music, got my foot in the door, and then from there, of course, I started like doing more research and seeing what it takes to become an artist. That's how I learned about engineering and producing and whatnot, and then eventually kind of led to me owning my own personal studio to work out of, and people wanted to work in my own studio. So I was like, well, hey, this is making me money right now.
You start making music. Where did the switch come, or what made you decide that this business? Well, even right. The business of doing business in the entertainment, in this entertainment thing. When did you decide that the business of doing business, as opposed to being, an artist out front, not that they don't do business,
right?
But when did you decide that this was the way that you wanted to go?
Well, when I was living in Virginia after I graduated, like I said, we built our own studio. We actually had a lot of artists, like other local artists in Virginia, used to come to our house and record. So it was one of those. I mean, it wasn't like it was a major thing that just kind of said, oh, light bulb, let's do this. It was more the fact that, yeah, people were coming in and paying us money. So it was like, okay, it makes sense just to keep trying to make money doing this instead of having to try to get a regular job and trying to pursue my whole artist career. It's like, okay, I can just record a couple artists, have my money now, and then I can, when they're done, they leave the studio, I'm going to go work on my own stuff.
Okay, so let's get here. How did you learn any of it without going to school?
Well, I did work out of many studios. Even when I lived in Virginia, I would go to a spot called Midi East. They were like a professional studio up in the DC area. I would watch and see how they would move. A lot of it was watching. I even went on tour with Good Music for a short period of time. So I got to watch some of these engineers in Miami and Orlando and just kind of picked up stuff as I went. And then, of course, I did a lot of my research right on YouTube, man. I just YouTube University, man.
Yeah, I was about to say that's what Ben calls it, YouTube University.
YouTube University. I learned a lot on there. And of course, good thing about music is it's all experimental. So you just sit there, like I said, you do it long enough and you try so many different things. I'm going to try this plugin. I never use it. I have, in here I probably got like $30,000-$40,000 worth of plugins that some of them I'll never even touch. So every day I'll just be like, I want to see what this one does.
Right.
Boom, click on it, open it, start messing with the knobs, maybe go through a couple presets to see how crazy you can really change the sound with this. And you just kind of go from there. But like I said, it's one of those things where, I felt like I always had an ear for it. So I know exactly what stuff needs to sound like. And having that ear will kind of get you where you need to be super fast. Instead of sitting here trying to like figure everything from scratch, like you don't even know what a good mix would even sound like. You go, oh, I hear it on the radio, it sounds good, but I don't know how to achieve it. I at least did my research enough to know what plugins do, and I know exactly where I need to get that sound to. So that kind of helped me out quite a bit. But it's funny thing you said about the Full Sail, right? So I actually did go over there to go check it out to see what, maybe it could have been a potential to like help me get where I want to be quicker. That's
Right.
when I first moved out here to Florida in 2008. Went down to the campus, and I remember, I'll never forget. They pulled up like transformers or something like that, and they had all the audio, and everybody's just sitting there clicking, trying to figure out what is what. Like, oh, what's this track, this and that. And they're pretty much just sitting there hitting play and stop, play and stop. I actually went in there and chopped it up and made stutter effects and Nicki Minaj. I can do the, doing all
Right.
that kind of crazy stuff. And I guess the guidance counselor, or whoever was doing the tour or whatever, pulled me aside and he's like, "What are you doing in here, man?"
Right.
And there was another funny thing is right before the class even started, he asked, and I'll never forget this. He said, "Does anybody in this class knows what MIDI means?" And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I'm going to come to something like this, I need to already know what I'm getting into. Nobody had their hand up. I'm sitting there like, and they're like, he was confused. He like nobody. I guess he's so used to just people that are completely green coming in there. So that's what Full Sail really is. People that have no idea, and you need a head start to figure out what it is. I'm just sitting there like, musical instrument, digital interface. He's like, I haven't heard anybody say that in like 10 years from this class, like coming in as like a tour.
Right.
And then he pulled me aside and he's like, "What are you doing here, man?" He's like, "You want a job? You want to teach over here?" And I'm sitting here like, "No, I want to learn." He's like, "You already know everything."
Right. So from what? So I don't.
I was
And
already
big
into
shout
it.
out to Full Sail too,
Yeah, of
because I
course.
mean
I
it
love
seems
Full Sail.
like from what I know about it, and even going back to Orlando now, they've taken over such a big space, and the stuff that they're doing over there, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So do you? If I'm a kid
Yeah.
that's thinking about maybe wanting to be an engineer, right? Do you recommend that I look into school or
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not just because that was my path doesn't mean it's for everybody. Um, but I would definitely say, to become a great engineer, you need to learn as much as you can. So obviously, Full Sail, they teach you a lot of stuff. They have a lot of equipment in there you can get your hands on. So absolutely, I mean, if you feel like that's the right direction to take, and you feel like, okay, I need to get a head start on this, absolutely go Full Sail. I mean, even they have the SPC up here with, I think it's one of the Morris brothers that teaches there. Used to own Morris Sound back in the day, and of course they've been doing it for many many years. So I mean, if you can learn from somebody, that's always going to be your best route. And like I said, with my path, I got to move around and be in a lot of studios, and I was always that fly on the wall trying to figure out what they're doing, watching how they dissect mixes and stuff like that. So I always kind of pretty much how I mix is like just probably about 50, 60 different engineers styles that I kind of made into my own. So hands on, of course, I always say that's going to be the best. I'm always been a throw them in the fire and figure it out for yourself. That's how I've always learned myself.
right?
But not everybody has that kind of patience to like sit there and figure it out and figure it out and figure it out. A lot of people kind of quit when they feel like they're not making no money or it's not moving for them. They try to jump into something else immediately. This is like my passion. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
even if I had a regular job, I'd still be doing this. You know what I'm saying? So it wouldn't have mattered whether what my current situation is, whether I owned a studio or not. I was gonna do music regardless. So
Gotcha. I'm gonna play kid who's never been in a studio at all because I'll guide you to where I'm trying to go here. Right? We turn around here. This is your. I'm waiting for you to tell me. I'm not. I'm not.
yeah,
This is not a trick question. This would be considered. And remember, the audience that we're talking to is
right,
very much high school,
gotcha.
early college, right? So I want to learn every time I come into a situation like this, right? So when I
Okay.
ask you this, I'm really asking, what is this board actually called?
Oh, well, that's an SSL nucleus. It's kind of what people would think it's a mixing board, but uh, it's more of like a MIDI interface that controls the Pro Tools faders.
Gotcha. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you why I asked you that. I asked you that because, um, and you can make sure that I'm using these terms right. Right.
Right.
There's such a thing as like what they call like 4-track studios, 16-track studios,
Okay.
32-track studios. Right? Am I correct?
Yes.
And that is determined by the amount of like tracks that would be on your mixing thing. Right.
Right.
So here's my question, and I've heard this because being a New Yorker, right? Teddy Riley, Google him if you have to, probably one of the most historic producers, created a sound called New Jack Swing.
Hmm.
But one of the stories on Teddy Riley that I've always heard was that he was a master of the 4-track, right? That he had, right? That
Hmm.
he had a 4-track and he did like old school records called The Show on it, which is a hip hop classic, right? He did them on a 4-track. And some of it, even some other dope records he did on a 4-track. So, and you know nowadays, right? If you're watching Instagram long enough, you watch anything, you'll get an ad, right? So if you follow enough studios or you look at enough boards, all of a sudden all these boards and things start coming across, right?
Right.
So you buy the biggest and best equipment because I need this.
Yeah.
In your opinion, is it better to maybe get something small and master that as opposed to buying some gigantic piece that everybody in the store tells you is the
Right.
best, but you know have no idea how to use it?
Well, here's the thing. Now, music is with technology. Everything's kind of more in the box than anything. The plugins are super powerful. Um, you technically don't need all the big analog crazy stuff. It's obviously different engineers like different tastes. Um, I would definitely say if you're just starting off, don't worry about having all the crazy analog stuff because doing all the routing and the upkeep of it is it's gonna drive you crazy.
Right, and let me stop you for a second because I think I like where you're going, but I don't want to like lose my question here. My
Okay.
question is kind of like, do you always need the biggest and the best and not know how to use it as opposed to getting maybe something simpler, even if it's that smaller thing in a box
Right.
and mastering that as opposed to trying to buy the biggest box and not understanding how to use that?
Yeah, I would absolutely just take the smaller thing, learn that because pretty much the smaller thing is just going to be Pro Tools on maybe a laptop, and you'd be surprised how many hit records just came from that without the big mixing board. Like
Right.
I said, you can everything with technology being on your side, take advantage of it. Learn the plugins. You know what I'm saying? You don't need this big mixing board and sit here and tweak every sound. Of course, if you can afford it, go for it and learn it. But if not, or maybe just go to another studio that has it and learn it that way, opposed to you buying it and you're sitting there like scratching your head trying to figure this thing out. Um, but yeah, you're better off. I would just say if you're gonna be an engineer and you're picking your DAW, whether it's Pro Tools, Logic, or Cubase, or uh, whatever, all the ones that are out there now. I would just say figure out your program first. You know what I'm saying? Learn how to navigate in there because that is going to be your key. Back then, there was no Pro Tools. So everyone had, these ADATs or reel to reel. So you had to have the big mixing board to even have those channels available. In Pro Tools, 128 channels, right there digitally. You don't even need this.
Right.
So it's just one of those things that just makes it easy. I can just kind of go up and down real quick. But in the grand scheme of things, man, like a lot of these big engineers, they don't have these big mixing boards like they used to. They just do it in their bedroom of their house, and they're mixing multi-platinum records. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, just learn your DAW before you jump into all the analog stuff. Because if you don't know your DAW, you're gonna have this big mixing board, but you don't know how to work inside Pro Tools. You're gonna crash, man.
Right. You one of the things that I also saw too, right? And this is again not a slight on Full Sail or any of those schools, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of these places, one of the things they say is, they talk to you about all the skills, right? They talk to you about learning and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what they never talk to you about is getting a job when you're done with all that training. What would you tell a kid about that part? Because obviously you've created a different way because you've opened your own studio, right?
Right.
But and this is just me on the outside looking in because I read a lot of records. I read credits a lot, and then being from New York and I've moved around a few spaces, right? The guy who works in the big studio is not necessarily quitting that job in a year. He's
Right.
there for years and years and years. Like the guys who engineered baseline for Jay-Z and them when they had Rockefeller, right? You're not moving from that job. That job
Right.
is a job that works every day because people are coming to that studio. You become the engineer in the main room. You become the engineer of the B room, however many rooms there are. You don't move from those jobs. So when you look at it like that, right? You say that if there's 4 or 5 rooms in each of these studios, but you
Mhm.
got 70 kids coming out of a school like Full Sail, and I'll just say on the low end, every 3 months, right? You got 70 kids coming out, and that's not even to include the schools around the country. What would you tell a kid when it comes to that part about finding their way to, even after having some training and learning what they figure is a skill,
Right.
how to get a job or make money with it?
Well, key word of that is going to be relationships. You definitely need to get in with anybody you know. I'm talking to you guys out there. If it is an engineer or maybe a studio manager or anything, just already build that relationship with them. Whether you have to just take them out to dinner, talk to them, let them know where you're at, what you're trying to do, what your dreams and goals are. Of course, you might have to come in as an intern. You just have to just deal with it. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you have your job, take care of your bills, intern your way until you figure out, like, or maybe it could be a situation where they're going to need somebody and their main engineer can't make it because they got sick or they're out of town, and you are now the one to step in, and you just do your thing. If you kill it, I guarantee you sometimes that artist will be like, you know what, man, I like you, I'm going to use you when I can't get my guy, or you know what, I'm going to take you on the road with me. I'll come here to the studio, work with my guy, but while I'm on the road, I'm going to have you come with me. So a lot of that's actually a lot of stories of a lot of these engineers that are like, attached to a major artist. They all started off as an intern, and
Right.
it's just they impressed them, and they're like, you know what, since you're an intern, you're not like stuck paying the bills of that studio. It's not like you own the studio or anything. You can just come on the road with me, and I'll just pay you whether weekly or daily or whatever it is. And that's and of course those engineers become household names in the industry because that artist they kind of grew with the artist. So I always say, build your relationships.
Do a lot of the artists now just seem to have their own in-house engineer that they keep with them all the time, or that, because I guess too, with um, bootlegging per se, or things being leaked
Right.
per
Yeah.
se, that laptop that your engineer has becomes super important and critical to holding on to all the work that you guys have in progress that you're working on, right? So
Absolutely.
has it become like a thing in the industry that most of these artists have like one person or two people that they work with, so that way if something comes up missing, they
Yeah.
know exactly where to go back?
Yeah, they have their trust circle. And yeah, a lot of times they'll have their own personal hard drives. So even if they do like go rent out a studio in LA or something with their engineer, they usually attach their hard drive to it. They don't even let the session even touch the computer. So that's, of course, that's one key. And then the second key, of course, it would be the fact that they have the sound for that artist. A lot of artists, they have certain sounds that they like, whether it could be a reverb effect or a certain auto tune level that the artist trusts that engineer can nail every single time. And then, once sometimes when that artist will maybe work with another engineer and they can't get it right immediately, kills the vibe. Next thing you know, the artist is like, I can't work with this guy. So that's why they'll bring their own engineer. They know they got it. They have whether it's a template they already have set for that artist, they can just open up Pro Tools, throw the beat in there, bam, the artist's sound is already there, and they can just keep moving on forward from there. And it's like, it's a comfort thing with the artist. That's one thing about, you know, me personally working with a mini artist, they kind of um, they look at how quick we move and everything because they want the most bang for their buck and all that stuff when they're working in the studio, and they know they can trust me every single time. So I'm pretty sure that goes for any artists that have their own personal engineers. It's like that trust factor of you're not going to leak my stuff and you're going to have my sound down pat where I don't have to sit here and wait for you to figure out what the heck I want. You know what I'm saying?